She never imagined that such a small, innocent request could awaken something so terrifying. The millionaire's daughter, raised in silken halls and endless comfort, believed she lived in a world where nothing could harm her. Every toy she wanted appeared in her hands. Every wish she spoke was granted without question. So when she looked up at her father and begged him to style her hair, it seemed like nothing more than a tender moment between parent and child. She pictured herself smiling in the mirror, ribbons in her hair, her father's gentle hands weaving strands into beauty. But what she could not see, what she would never have believed, was the storm raging beneath his calm exterior. Behind the warmth of his smile, years of resentment and buried anger seethed like fire waiting for air. The scissors he held gleamed under the light, a harmless tool in appearance, but in his mind they had already become instruments of punishment. Every strand of her hair was more than just hair. It was a symbol of betrayal, of wounds he had carried in silence. And as she lowered herself into the chair, her trust given freely, she unknowingly placed herself at the mercy of a man who no longer saw her as a daughter, but as the perfect target of his revenge. The day began like any other in the lavish mansion. The golden rays of sunlight filtered through expensive curtains, dancing across the little girl's room filled with toys and luxuries that most children could only dream of. She ran to her father, eyes wide with innocence, tugging on his sleeve.
"Daddy, please style my hair today," she pleaded.
Her voice was sweet, her smile pure, the kind of request that should have melted any parent's heart. To her, it was just a daughter's wish, a playful moment of closeness. To him, it was something else entirely. He paused, staring at her, as memories of past betrayals stabbed at his mind. Still, he nodded slowly, forcing a smile.
"Of course," he whispered, his tone steady but his eyes dark.
She clapped her hands in excitement, rushing to sit on the chair in her colourful bedroom. She thought it was a game. She thought it was love. But for him, it was the perfect stage for revenge. As she looked at the mirror, adjusting her little dress, she had no idea that the scissors he held were not meant for beauty. She giggled, waiting for her makeover. But behind her, his expression had already turned cold, preparing for something far more sinister. For years, he had lived with bitterness gnawing at his soul. Outwardly, he was the image of success, a millionaire admired by society, a man others envied. But behind closed doors, his heart was a battlefield of anger and scars. He remembered the betrayals, the humiliations, the countless moments when love turned into mockery. Every laugh of his daughter, every sparkle of her innocence, reminded him of a life he could never fully control. To the world, she was a princess. To him, she was part of the empire that chained him to his suffering. His fists clenched as he recalled nights of loneliness and silent rage. He hid it well, always smiling in public, but deep down his soul was cracking. And today, as she handed over her trust so innocently, he felt the weight of all those years pressing on him. The scissors in his grip became more than just metal. They became his tool of justice. He leaned closer, whispering fake reassurances. "You'll look beautiful," he said, his tone soothing but hollow. She laughed, believing him. But in his heart, the decision was already made. This was no styling session. This was the day his rage would finally spill out. She sat happily, swinging her legs, waiting for her hair to be braided. The room smelled of lavender and toys, a place of comfort. But the air slowly thickened with tension. He lifted a lock of her hair, twisting it in his hand. His grip was not gentle. She winced, but said nothing, assuming it was part of the process. Then came the first snip. The sound was sharp, echoing louder than it should have. Strands of hair fell to the floor like broken pieces of her childhood. She gasped, staring at the mirror, but forced a smile.
"It's okay."
"Right, Daddy?" she asked softly. He gave no answer, his face blank, his eyes cold. Snip, snip. Each cut was harsher, more violent, stripping away not just her hair, but her innocence. She felt her scalp burn as he pulled harder. Her small hands trembled, gripping the edge of the chair. The scissors moved with mechanical precision, relentless, merciless. She wanted to cry, but she still trusted him. She believed this was love. But deep down, a shiver of fear began to take root. The transformation was no longer beautiful. It was brutal. Her eyes filled with tears, but she bit her lip, trying to be brave.
"Daddy, please." "It hurts," she whispered, her voice fragile.
He didn't stop. Instead, he gripped her hair tighter, pulling her head back. The pain was unbearable for the little girl. Tears spilled down her cheeks, blurring her reflection in the mirror. She sobbed softly, hoping he would feel pity. But his face remained stone, unshaken by her cries. She tried to cover her head with her hands, but he slapped them away, his fury unrelenting. The scissors sliced again, sending clumps of hair to the floor. The room that once felt like a safe haven now felt like a prison. Her toys stared silently. The wallpaper mocked her with its cheerful patterns. She cried louder, hoping someone would hear. But the mansion's thick walls swallowed her screams. Every snip was a wound to her soul. Her pleas of "Stop, Daddy, please," were met with cold silence. Her small body shook, powerless against the strength of his hands. She realized she was not being styled.
She was being punished.
Her childhood innocence was being torn apart, strand by strand. The scissors, once harmless, were now weapons of destruction. He held them like a soldier holds a sword, every cut deliberate, every motion filled with rage. She begged him to stop, her tiny voice breaking, but her desperation only fueled him further. To him, the sound of slicing hair was not sorrow. It was music. He twisted her hair cruelly, yanking her head back until she cried out. The scissors gleamed under the bedroom light, sharp and merciless. Her scalp burned with every pull, but he ignored her suffering. He was lost in his own world, blinded by vengeance. Her hair, once soft and shining, now lay scattered in piles across the floor. She reached out to grab the fallen strands, clutching them as if holding on to her lost innocence. But he tore them away, continuing his ruthless work. The girl's sobs grew louder, her body shaking uncontrollably. He ignored her, focused only on his twisted sense of justice. To her, this was torture. To him, this was victory. The scissors clicked rhythmically, slicing away the last traces of her trust. And in that room, love had transformed into cruelty. The door creaked open. Someone had heard the cries. A man, perhaps a family member, perhaps a servant, stepped into the room. His eyes widened in horror at the sight before him. The little girl sat trembling, her hair hacked unevenly, tears streaming down her face. The father loomed over her, scissors in hand, breathing heavily like a predator. For a moment, silence consumed the room. Then the witness gasped, his voice trembling. "What are you doing?" he shouted. But the father didn't flinch. His eyes, wild and unblinking, remained fixed on his victim. The witness rushed forward but froze midway, terrified of what he was seeing. The child reached out desperately, her small hands trembling.
"Help me," she sobbed.
The witness's heart shattered at the sight. He wanted to pull her away, to stop the madness, but the father's presence was overpowering. The scissors gleamed, still raised. Hair covered the floor like evidence of a crime. The witness realized this was not just a haircut, it was an act of violence. And in that moment, the perfect illusion of a wealthy family crumbled into horror. The air grew thick with tension, suffocating everyone in the room. The father's hands trembled, not with hesitation, but with fury. The scissors hovered dangerously close to the girl's scalp. She screamed louder now, her voice raw from crying. The witness shouted, begging him to stop. "She's your daughter," he pleaded. But the father didn't listen. His mind was clouded, consumed entirely by rage. Every snip was a strike against his past, every pull a punishment he believed she deserved. The girl thrashed, trying to escape, but his grip was iron. The witness lunged forward, grabbing his arm, but the father shoved him away violently. The child's sobs grew weaker, her strength fading. The room felt smaller, darker, like the walls themselves were closing in. The scissors glinted with finality, poised for one last cruel act. The witness cried out, desperate but powerless. The girl's voice cracked as she whispered, "Daddy!"
Please. But mercy had no place in his heart.
This was the breaking point, the moment when love died completely, replaced only by destruction, only by... The father lifted the scissors for the last time, his hand trembling, not with hesitation, but with grim satisfaction, his face twisted, eyes burning with a madness that had long been buried beneath years of silence. The little girl's entire body shook, her tiny frame consumed by terror she could not understand. Her small hands clenched into fists, as if holding on to the last fragments of her innocence. The witness screamed, his voice sharp and desperate, but his pleas dissolved in the heavy air of madness. The father heard nothing. He was lost, swallowed whole by his thirst for vengeance. The blades glinted under the light, cold and merciless as they hovered near her scalp. With one cruel motion, the scissors closed, their metallic snip echoing like thunder in the quiet room. The final strands of her hair fell, drifting down to the carpet like withered petals from a dying flower. The girl gasped, her breath catching in her throat as her reflection in the mirror became unrecognizable. The person staring back was no longer a child filled with joy, but a broken soul marked by cruelty. Her hair lay scattered across the floor, a graveyard of innocence, each lock a silent witness to her pain. The father dropped the scissors, the clatter loud and final, like the closing of a coffin lid. His chest rose and fell with heavy breaths, his satisfaction thick with something darker than victory. He looked down at her, but there was no trace of love, no hint of remorse, only cold emptiness. She sobbed uncontrollably, clutching at her ruined hair, her cries raw, piercing the silence. Her voice trembled, carrying the weight of betrayal, a sound that would haunt the walls forever. To him, this was triumph, the climax of a revenge long imagined, long desired, but to her it was devastation.
A scar that would never fade, a wound cut deeper than flesh. The witness stood frozen, his face pale.
Unable to process the horror before his eyes, his lips quivered, but no words came out. He was trapped in shock, drowning in disbelief. The room grew painfully still, the silence broken only by the girl's cries of anguish. The father turned away, his figure retreating slowly, swallowed by the looming shadows of the mansion. He did not look back, for in his mind the deed was done, his vengeance satisfied. The bright wallpaper, once cheerful, now seemed grotesque, mocking the tragedy it had contained. The colourful toys, once symbols of joy, now lay untouched, like silent witnesses to cruelty. Every corner of the room bore the stain of what had unfolded.
Every detail tainted by sorrow. The girl's trust,
once pure and unshakable, was shattered beyond repair, fragments scattered like her hair. The witness finally knelt beside her, but his comfort could not mend what was broken. And as the father vanished into the darkness, one truth remained: his revenge was complete. But the price he paid was the destruction of his own blood, and so, what began as a daughter's innocent request ended in betrayal. The scissors were supposed to bring beauty, but instead they delivered pain. No amount of wealth, no mansion, no luxury could hide the darkness that festered inside a broken soul. The father's revenge left scars deeper than the eye could see, scars that would haunt her for life. This chilling story is a reminder that sometimes the the greatest dangers don't come from strangers, but from those we trust the most. If this story gripped you, make sure to hit the like button.
Comment below, what would you have done if you were the witness in that room?
And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that peel back the mask of human nature, exposing the shadows that lurk within.
Until next time, stay safe.
And remember, appearances can deceive.